everyone, and I think thanks for making it up. Thanks for joining all the panelists. I would say this topic of future of education is anyways an interesting one because I personally feel it's got action, it's got emotions, it's got human aspect, it's got all the distractions that we're talking of. It has technology element and everything to do with what we can think of from a overall packaging. So this is I'm sure the audience would be curious to understand what's going in this sector. At the same time, I'm sure that the panelists here are very passionate about sharing their experiences and experiences. Okay, so, yeah. So I remember when I was a child, then would have apprehensions of going to the school. That was the case where you required your daily dose of parental push to get to the school because it appeared like a monotonous daily routine to get to the same affairs. But if I talk about today's generation, my daughter is a teenager, where she says that she's now apprehensive of getting out of the school and come back home because she enjoys all the IB infrastructure, and then they've got many things to do practically. So with that, I think the mindset shift has not happened in days. It has taken years to shift to this mindset. Today's education, I'm sure, the transition is much faster. We've got the flexibility of choosing our subjects now. We've got global education system, making entry to the country. We've got all the choices that are available to us. We've got flexibility of opting what's good, what's bad, what's the choice, what's not the choice. The technology is there to support, the abundance of content is there, and we're talking of everything available from a learner's and learning provider's perspective. So I think without spending more time on that, I would request our panelists to talk about what could be the road ahead for the knowledge providers and seekers to be able to cater to the requirements of future. And especially when it's a volatile economic conditions, we've got new opportunities, many unknowns that emerge out of nowhere. So maybe we can get to the rounds here. So starting from sir, if you could share your views, and maybe we'll spend some 4-5 minutes. That's my in the interest of time request to all. But we'll talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
7 minutes.
When we are thinking about the roadmap for the future of education, I think we need to look at what are the aspirations of our young people. I deal with higher education as chairman of University Grants Commission, and I'm also a professor of electrical engineering at IIT Delhi. And for decades, I've been interacting with young people. And you notice a few very distinct characteristics associated with young people. They want to be good learners. They want to be creative and innovative. They want to be critical thinkers. And they want to question the authority. It could be a textbook. It could be a well-established theorem. They want to question that. They want to also be part of teams and also lead their teams. And they want to take risks and learn from the failures that emanate when you take risks. And most of all, they want to become good human beings. These are the aspirations of our young people. So when you want to meet these aspirations, we need to look at how our higher educational institutions have been imparting their education. For too long, we have remained too rigid without really caring about the cognitive diversities that exist among the students, the financial capabilities of the students and their needs and aspirations. So time has come for us to make our education more flexible. And that's the reason why we are now implementing the National Education Policy during last 2 years with the sole aim of providing more freedom, flexibility, and choices to our students. And while we are doing this, we also have to remember that higher educational institutions are social institutions. They are not corporate entities. These higher educational institutions are the places where we train the students to gather bits and pieces of this vast human knowledge so that they become competent. And higher educational institutions are the only places where research is done for social good, driven by curiosity, not financial gains. And it is only the universities and colleges where young minds, young learners can coexist with cutting edge research in the institutions. And that's the reason why time has come for us to maximize the social benefit to the society. Our universities have to transform themselves to maximize this. So very briefly, I will tell you how we can maximize the social benefit to our students, parents, and to our country. This can be done by three things. Number one, the learning that we impart, it should be based on the learning outcomes. The education that we provide should be based on the learning outcomes. The education has to be personalized. For too long, our education has been teacher-centric. Now it has to become student-centric and it has to be personalized. And education has to be done on a mass scale. The reason why today we need to do education at a mass scale is that in 2014, across the world in higher educational institutions, we had about 200 million students. Now it is estimated that by 2030, we will have 400 million students across the world in higher educational institutions, and a significant part of this student population will be from India. Today we have 41 million students in our higher educational institutions. That is going to double and triple. So therefore, whatever solutions that we are going to provide in higher education will become a template for providing solutions across the globe. So therefore, we have a lot of ground to cover to achieve this goal.
So great, thanks, sir. And Lawrence, you want to pick it up? Okay. Okay. So maybe Ranjita, if you could pick it up.
I second what Jagadish sir said. Now, my introduction is I come from an edtech company, has been associated with the industry for about 15 years, and I have seen that how tech has taken over the whole development and ecosystem in Indian education system. The question was that how can we take it forward? The way forward is very clear that we need to have a collaborative approach between government, stakeholders, student, educators, and edupreneurs. A collaborative approach is going to ensure that with tech or with teaching assistance, we are going to provide the best learning outcomes to the student, measure how the student and learners are getting impacted by the teaching and learning, and also ensure that we reach out to the people, the large masses, which is essentially important to develop this ecosystem from the basic. So let me take it to some of the statistic that says, UNESCO says that about 256 million children are underprivileged and can't go to school. Several reasons, of course, affordability happens to be the one. Second is also that they do not have proper education system in place. Yeah, I appreciate the current initiatives that government and UGC together has taken to address most of the issues that used to prevail in Indian education system. NEP is of course one of it, and which has really supported children to a masses, and I think they are going to be the critical thinkers. They're not going to be just the learning. So Albert Einstein says that education is the learning of facts and not the learning of facts, but the training of mind to think. Until we do not create the critical thinkers, the problem solvers, the problem of learning, teaching is going to remain still in the system. So as I spoke about the statistic of UNESCO, it's essential that we all work towards it. So with government's initiative, which is like E-Vidya Yojana, which is going to support about 25 crore schools in India, supporting them to learn. Now I talk about the higher education system, where I have dealt over more than a decade, I think I have seen a significant difference which we've been able to make to the minds of learner, acceptance in the ecosystem, and developing. Of course, I would love to mention about government's initiative, which is our Yuva Kushal Yuva Yojana, which is supporting the working professionals and also some of the learners to work around and upskill themselves, which has been quite essential element in the whole ecosystem. And I think with a collaborative approach, as I said, from an educator, government, from the regulators and edupreneurs is going to support in encouraging this and making it to the global level and not restricted to the geography.
Sure. I'm Monique Keneddy. I work with the Australian government. I'm this Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner. But I come out of the education system and I'm academic by trade. I think these are really interesting questions, and I really do applaud the work that's happening through the UGC and the National Education Policy. Certainly Australia has been watching very closely the development, the really speedy development of educational opportunity here. And one of the things that we really focused on in the National Education Policy is the interest in internationalisation. So in this world that you're describing that is changing and challenged, I think really the answers in education are around diversity. So accessing different modalities, accessing different content, reaching different students. Always a response to change is making sure that diversity is in place. Focusing on innovation, as you mentioned, that education is about knowledge, it's also about being able to think and create. And so providing opportunities for innovation to emerge through, for me, through the rub between difference coming together. So different people, different nations, different disciplines coming together and finding new ways forward. And this often happens, as you mentioned, through partnership. Partnership and entrepreneurship, so that we see the development of relationships between nations, of course, but relationships between universities and industry, industry and community groups, and where these great sparks of new ideas are coming forward, and collaboration developing that has an enduring base for the development of good education. And then I think finally the access that we're providing in India. One of the things that I've noticed as being really outstanding is a fundamental kind of systemic interest in building the infrastructure that makes education available and accessible. So right now in India there are 1.2 billion smart phone users, for example, mobile phone users. By the time you celebrate your 100th year of independence, you'll have a 96% penetration for smartphones, and the education that's accessible through those kinds of investment in infrastructure for mobility of education, I think is absolutely fundamental, and it gives great optimism about the future for education in India and the opportunity for nations to engage together in education.
So I'm knowing that you've been very excited about sharing this.
Do I look more excited than the rest? Thank you. I know. Lovely to hear the speakers before me, and now I want to come out with 2 thoughts, and I'll be very crisp. Point number 1 is, the purpose of education according to UNESCO, and the purpose is learning to lead, learning to do, and learning to be. Now the question as educators we need to ask ourselves, whether we are looking at NEP, whether we are looking at our own classroom teaching, are we doing this? Because the learning to lead part means to be proactive. Are we teaching them to be proactive? Learning to do, that is providing them a skill. And learning to be, that is learning to be a better human being. Are we doing these 3 things? So anytime we are looking at our teaching, learning, pedagogies and so on, we need to ask this question. And one more thought. As a professor, obviously I would do a lot of research. So I was looking at a report by the OECD and a little bit World Economic Forum about the future of jobs. What's emerging is OECD is decoupling education from jobs. And of course, this is not for an immediate period, but this is over a few decades. And that is very scary to me, because we have not yet reached a level where we are able to provide people jobs. And here is OECD already predicting that over the next few decades, with the rapid expansion of technology and growth of technology and its self-learning systems, we as a society are going to have major challenges. And from that point of view, I think it's an important time for all stakeholders to get together and examine with the way forward, because I would neither like to talk from a dystopian point of view saying that technology is bad, nor would I like to take the point, the euphoric point of view that everything is great about technology. So this is where I stand. How can we take a moderate approach, look at things with a clear-eyed vision, and to my mind, that's the way forward. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think we talked about personalization in the education. We talked about the policies. We talked about what's bad and what's challenging in times ahead. One important aspect also we should try and cover is about today the world needs sustainable, focus on sustainability. There's sustainable practices in every aspect of business, every aspect of even learning. So how do you suggest that the government and the stakeholders, private institutions should come together and provide a sustainable knowledge ecosystem which addresses the challenge of the world today? So you want to pick this up? Yep.
I wasn't anticipating that question. Thank you, Nitesh. So I think to go back to the previous conversation and then build from that, I think we have two tensions going, or a tension between two things going on here. We have one level, what Professor Kumar was talking about in relation to the growth in the number of people needing higher education, and 400 million people being educated at any one point. It is incredible, but it also has led to, I think, what I've seen certainly in Australia and the UK, where I've taught as a political scientist, is an isomorphism around what we teach. So whereas if you go back 50, 60 years ago, different universities taught different things, and knowledge was not a standardized product. Now higher education has become commodified in many disciplines, to the extent that it doesn't really matter which university you go to, whether it's a university in a country that you've never even heard the name of that university before, or whether you go to one of the major top 100 universities in the world, you will be taught the same knowledge in many disciplines. And that isomorphism is important, I think, because it means that everybody comes out with the same knowledge. And I have to confess that when I go to the doctor, I'm really glad that regardless of which doctor I go to, they have the same base knowledge and therefore will be able to treat my symptoms in the same way. But at the same time, we were also talking about how learning has to be personalized, how it has to be what the person wants to learn. And I think the challenge that we have there as universities is, how do we create inquiring minds that actually want to learn different things, will want to challenge the knowledge that we're giving them, and use the wealth of information that now exists on the internet in a critical way to actually start to develop your own personal understanding. And Professor Asha was really referring to that when you were talking about the UNESCO education framework and everything. And I don't think we've really managed to understand how we create inquiring minds as opposed to just critical. So people talk about critical thinking as an important aspect of what education does, but actually if we're going to have a sustainable education system which is for lifelong learning, because I think we all now know that you don't do your bachelor's degree and stop learning. People keep talking about how 85% of the jobs that will be available in 2040 haven't actually been created yet, and all those kinds of things. So the numbers don't really matter. It's the scale of numbers that I guess are important here. That we have to continue to keep learning. And I look around the panel, and no offence to my fellow panelists, but we're all of a certain age. We've all had to keep learning how to use it. I think most of us will have been academics at a point when the internet didn't exist, and we read physical copies of books and physical copies of journals and things. I haven't actually physically been into a library in 20 years, I don't think. I've had to learn all of that. We need to create minds that are able to keep learning, keep inquiring, inquisitive minds, and that is the challenge when you've got 400 million students. 200 million at the moment, 400 million by 2030, I think you said. 400 million minds. How do we get all of those minds being creative and inquisitive in the way in which they approach their learning, and continue to do that for the rest of their lives? Because that's what we need to do, and that's the challenge to sustainable education ecosystem that we need.
Sure. So I love that I have so many questions to answer now that our panelists have, come forward with so many questions. I'll start with the last one first, which is that we are living in a world today where we don't know what the future jobs are going to be. We are trying to raise children, give them an education with no idea of what jobs they're going to do. So what this actually means is that they need to be able to have transferable skills, or skills which can be applied to different kinds of jobs. And the 21st century learning skills is one of the ways of making it happen. And in that, in particular, I would like to talk about the learning and innovation skills. And the ones they talk about are what you all have been saying all this while. So they're called the 4 C's. So you have critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration. So these 4 C's, and irrespective of the subject that the students are learning, it is important to bring in these aspects so that they're going to be applied to future jobs. And I come from a technology background, and I think that coding is a great way to use and teach all these 4 C's. So that's actually the 5th C getting added to it, to teach children how to be creative, because you are changing the perspective from which the students are looking at things. They are no longer just being a user of technology, but they are going into the driver's seat and becoming creators using technology. So we have to get into our children and the future generation that you don't just play with your phone, you actually create an app using your phone. So you learn how to code with it. And everything happens in teams. So the model of trying to learn things up and cram before the exam and then just go vomit it out in the paper and get marks doesn't work anymore. We have to have an assessment method, because in real life, people are always working in teams. It's always about collaboration. It's always about communication. And the digital aspect is important. We all saw during COVID, right? Overnight, the schools had to move from a brick and mortar model into completely online. And in that journey, the students were actually helping the teachers. So there was a role reversal. The kids were able to mute the students, mute the teacher on Microsoft Teams, for example, right? We had teachers complaining because they knew technology better than the teacher did themselves. So there was this role reversal. So there are the 2 aspects. One is we cannot sit on the chair and say this is what the students need to do. The students are going to be able to feed into the education system what is it that they need to learn or get good at. And then the learning is actually universal, because our teachers are unfortunately not really trained in technology, whereas our students have grown up with tech in their hands. So they have an edge and they are better at it. And I think that is the challenge that the education system has to be able to address today.
Okay, thanks a lot. We will address the questions towards the end, sorry for that. But we have with us Chairman UGC, and I'm sure that we've got a very prominent question in mind which talks about the new education policy. So sir, I have a question for you, which is that how does the idea of lifelong learning gets inculcated and gets addressed by the new education policy that the government is trying to bring in? And also I would want Ranjita, if I request that if you could talk about how does the new age ed tech companies see this as an opportunity, followed by other panelists to share. So sir, over to you.
Right. You have asked a very relevant question, but let me also ask the audience and all of you. I'm sure all of you agree with me that we need to provide holistic education to our students. When I say holistic education, different images come in our mind. But let me take you back to a shloka in Mahabharata. Long ago, thousands of years ago, this shloka said, the holistic education means the education that the student receives. 1/4 of that the student receives from the teacher, 1/4 the student receives by his or her own critical thinking, and the other 1/4 comes by working in teams through peer learning, and the last 1/4 comes over a period of time through experience. So you see that in holistic education, the role of teacher is actually 1/4. It's more like a mentoring rather than just teaching for 1 hour in the whole classroom. But here, there are two challenges. Why do we think that our students, they are afraid to critically think? That is because typically in our society, we attach some kind of negativity to failure. We should teach our students that failing is a normal thing in life. But from every failure, you can learn and move forward. And that is when students will be encouraged to take risks and think critically. And the peer working in teams, we rarely encourage our students to do that. We think that they are individuals, they have to solve a problem individually. But often I have seen in my own classroom, when I give a quiz, when I ask the students, you form teams and work, I can see the amount of noise that is created, the discussions that take place, the amount of knowledge that gets transferred from each other. That's the kind of team working that we need to provide to our students. And then last, experiential learning. To provide this opportunity to our students in our national education policy, when we came up with the curriculum and credit framework, we have introduced both short-term internship and also long-term internship. And we have also redefined the meaning of internship. For example, if my student from electrical engineering, if she wants to do an internship, we think that she can go to Intel, IBM or somewhere, Microsoft, and do the internship. But now we are saying that an electrical engineering student can also go to a court and observe how the proceedings are taking place, how technology can provide better access to ordinary people to justice. Or as a computer science student can go to a panchayat office in a remote place and see how technology is transforming the lives of people and how better solutions can be provided. So we are now expanding the definition of the internship so that they have diverse experiential learning in their education. But one more thing, and one of you also have mentioned, teachers come from a different generation. They rarely have worked in teams. They have rarely worked using technology to communicate with each other. So therefore, there is a great need to train our teachers. And in higher educational institutions in India, we have nearly 15 lakh students, teachers. And in the next 2 years, we are planning to train these teachers to change their attitude, to become more open in the classroom, to ask the students to challenge the teacher what they are teaching. So this openness is required, attitude has to be changed. And then teachers have to become not just the digital content consumers, but they should become digital content creators. So we have set a goal in next 2 years to provide basic training to these 15 lakh teachers so that the teaching learning processes in our educational institutions will improve.
Thank you, sir, for your views, and I think it's imperative to say that if we do not train teacher in the tech era, it's going to be difficult for us to look at the way forward. So I come back to the question that was given to me, that how EdTech is looking at it and how do we leverage this opportunity. So how I look at EdTech is very different from how it is looked at from outside. So EdTech is majorly looked to from a perspective of a growth, valuation and making money. But my perspective, I have led EdTech organization for 15 years and my view is very, very clear that it needs to make difference in the lives of people. Yeah? And that can only happen if we work together, as I said previously also, with government, with regulators, with educators, edupreneurs together. I think we will be able to take that opportunity to make difference to the societies. Yeah? So addressing to the needs, which is upskilling and what employer needs, is essentially important for all EdTech organizations. So giving a perspective back to what is the need of education as of now, and what is the kind of education that we need. So I think we can work as a great bridge. Coming back to the perspective is what corporate requires. So they no longer need people with a great, acads. What we need is, and we ourselves hire a large number of people from various, institutions across India. What we look at people are the problem solvers, people who can think critically and not bring in knowledge, because now Chat GPT, Google has all desired knowledge which is available. Yeah, learning from an online perspective is no longer relevant, because every content is there online. Yeah, the critical area is how do you make them learn to think and become problem solvers and become the critical thinkers. Yeah, so what EdTech can do is to collaborate with the institutions. That of course we're trying to do it with several restrictions, definitely, and trying to understand is how can we make the best use of technology platform to make it enable. The first thing that we're trying to do is to bring in the organization perspective, is what is expected for people to be employed and lifelong employed. Coming back to the institutions, giving them a feedback, which is the market research, supporting institute to create the tech ecosystem, which is essentially important in today's era, of course, and then supporting the overall cause, which is educating and creating better employability in India. So that's where I come with, and my core thought goes is this is what is needed for the educators. However, I go back again to Jagdish sir and appreciate some of the recent changes that was brought by UGC, which is introduction of SWAYAM, MOOCs, which is enabling students and working professionals to keep them updated. All of us know that our skills are no longer going to be relevant. I talk about myself. I have the industry knowledge. 15 years I'm working, but I keep upskilling myself as frequently as every year. Yeah. So I need to know what is design thinking if I'm running an organization. I need to know what is business analytics if I'm running the business. It is no longer that I can hire people and run it. I need to know myself. Now the conventional jobs have been replaced, and I think that's when the opportunity comes, when EdTech come together and collaborate with edupreneurs, educators, institutions, and build that bridge to bring in a quality education, support learners in better employability. To sum up, I would say that all of us know through several media references that even the tech people who come with the top tech institutes are also getting laid off, not because they're not talented. So question is not about the talent. The question is about, are they developed to become a problem solver and critical thinker? Yeah, and I think that's where I see the scope is, and we can do abundant great job. Yeah, thank you. Sir, also one initiative which is to allow NAC A++ institutions to go and offer online courses. I tell you my experience that I used to approach them a decade back, and they used to be very, very apprehensive about running online degree courses, and they used to feel that it is going to not degrade the value of the institutions. Now with your initiatives, people have been receptive about these ideas. Companies used to not accept online degrees is because they used to feel this is of no sense. Yeah, now with the new initiatives that says that online is equivalent to full-time degree, which has actually enabled working professionals to learn with the job, go back, upskill, and reach to the greater heights. And I am myself an example of it. Yeah, thank you.
No, very great. I think thanks for that, and lovely talking. So, sir talked about that the student would be creator of the future. By being able to, by being empowered to create content, to contribute. And we also heard that the panelists talked about how the EdTech and the future of technology would enable participant for the future. Now, the very prominent question that comes to, I think, almost everyone's mind is that what's the new normal? Is it still hybrid? Is it still online? Is it still offline? So what's going to prevail, and whether offline would get replaced by the new advancements happening around the world? And so that's what I think I'll request the panelists to talk about. So Dr. Lawrence, you want to take it first, followed by...
So the new normal is online. There's no question about that. I don't think you can offer education now without having aspects of it that are completely online. But, and you knew there was going to be a but, didn't you? Students don't want just online most of the time. Certainly, they want some online. They want access to information and to be able to study at times that suit them, in locations that suit them. And they want high quality content that will help them do that. But they also, and I think this came very much from what Professor Kumar was saying, that they know that they learn not just by reading, watching videos, doing quizzes online or whatever, all the things that online education provides. They know that they learn through engagement, they know that they learn through experience, and so on. So, and also students still think of studying as something that is much more than just the learning of knowledge, but actually the whole experience of learning. And that happens physically in face-to-face environments. And it was really interesting during COVID. My students, at first they thought it was great. They could log on to the class from their bed and thought that was wonderful. And within about 3-4 weeks, they were all itching to get back to the classroom. They couldn't wait to get back on campus. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I think that students are going to want that. But the challenge we face as academic institutions is how do we get that blended hybrid mode right so that there's maximum flexibility, maximum opportunity to learn online, but at the same time providing that opportunity to engage with your peers in ways that are meaningful and enjoyable. And one last point from me on that, I think the MBA is the classic example of that. People don't just do an MBA for the qualification, they do it for the people that they're going to meet when they do their MBA. And meeting people face to face, we all had an online chat before. It's much nicer to be in the room with you all than it is to see you online. You're much nicer people face to face.
If I could just have 2 seconds on this one. Thanks, Professor Pratchett. I think that, I'm not sure whether it's a transitionary moment, but I agree with you. Absolutely, online is the way of the future. I think the question is about what do we do then about our understanding of education leading to qualification? You know, we have been so focused on a qualification outcome from education rather than, you know, a skills development or a capability in work, that the development of a new understanding of credential, if you like, for capability, I think is a much more challenging question than about the modality, whether it's online or face-to-face. Thank you for the question.
So, since we are in the room and we're talking about a transition and I have people around me who can actually make a difference, this is a proposal that I would like to make, and I would love to hear what you all think about it. So we all know that content is available online. People can go on YouTube, on Coursera, on all the different websites and learn content, right? So the teachers are not really needed to be able to do that. We also know that we would like the students to work socially, collaboratively, because it will develop their communication skills, their collaboration skills, and also critical thinking. So for that, I would think that we should use the classrooms and the schools as incubators of learning, where they're actually applying whatever they have learned by reading content online and actually doing, creating, making. So have this making movement, the building movement, the creating movement, and do it in teams, which is what the real life scenario is like. So the way the classrooms are actually set up in classroom style, where you have a teacher's desk in front and rows of students sitting, needs to change. It has to be more like desks like we have right here, where the students are working in groups and they are applying the knowledge that they have learned online. So if they have learned a concept in physics, they're actually learning to build a pendulum and how to make that happen, how to make a clock work. So whatever it is that they have learned, to actually apply it practically in the classroom, which for me will change, and that has to be like the incubator, or where you're actually trying things and then taking it forward. When you have it done in high school and university, then that could be a way of having startups and entrepreneurs come out, because they have come up with new ideas and new solutions for problems that exist. So I think that's the future.
That's lovely.
Yeah. As usual, you'll tell me I'm overexcited. But when you listen to so many co-panelists and so many thoughts come to your mind after listening to each person, and you want to grab the mic soon to reply. But anyways, think I've been very patient. I haven't said a word. So the future is definitely blended. But when we are talking about the masses that need to be educated, we don't have a choice than going online on a mass scale. But coming back again, referring back to this whole point about building better human beings, which is the UNESCO ideal or vision. Obviously, I mean, some amount of face-to-face is going to be essential. Okay. And second aspect I want to say, and this is taking the discussion to the next level, in terms of the benefits of immersive learning. And I just want to give you two examples of what we have been experimenting in management education at MDI, where I was there as professor, and now at IMI, where I'm professor. One is called the Kullad economy. And the Kullad? The mitti wali jo hoti hai, that's the Kullad in which you get served tea on trains, etc. So Kullad economy means getting people to go down there at the grassroots and just simply trying to understand what's happening there on ground, and then bringing it back to the classroom and then learning, conceptualizing and generalizing about it. So that is one, Kullad economy. And second point, I teach a course on leadership where we are trying to promote people to become better, to trigger their entrepreneurial spirits. And in that, they actually have to conduct, kinds of mini organizations that they have to create, which means they create teams, they come up with an idea, they have to, plan, organize, they have to come up with a product, they have to market it, they have to make money. And all in the course of one term. All right. So what I'm trying to say is these experiments exist. But what is our challenge? Our challenge is how to make it mass scale. I mean, we may be doing it in a kind of an electives kind of a mode in the MBA program. But what about the entire 400, 500, 600, students in a cohort in one college? And I'm just talking one college. Which brings us back to the engagement, the collaboration across multiple stakeholders. This is the important thing. And last point I want to make before Nitesh again looks at me. I have time, thank you. Which is to say that certainly what chairman of UGC has highlighted about only 1/4 being the teacher's contribution to a total education of a human being or building a complete human being. Taking it from there, I think we as educators have to seriously re-examine what type of roles that we play. Okay, and again going back to good old Socrates and good old Indian scriptures, because some things transcend time and place, and regardless of which technology is in use, the wisdom makes sense. Socrates made a point, and Socrates said, I am only like the midwife, which helps the midwife helps birthing of the baby, right? So I am only a midwife who helps birthing of your ideas. So that means a professor has to be a facilitator of allowing, encouraging students to come out with their ideas. That is number one. And number two, on a very practical note, we have this categorization of educators as adhyapak, upadhyay, acharya and guru. There is no role for adhyapak anymore because adhyapak is only the transmitter of information. Today, Google Baba is there to give you, information. Then you have what is called upadhyaya, literally sitting at the feet of somebody and learning. Slightly better because it means that somebody is also giving you knowledge which is beyond the information bit, which I think now Chat GPT and all are trying to do, right? Because it is skimming masses of data and information and converting it into something to help you. Third level, acharya. Acharya is somebody who teaches you through achar. Achar meaning, actually practicing something, skill building, we can put it that way. And the last one, guru. Guru literally somebody who wipes away the darkness and gives you wisdom. So more and more, the role is there for a guru. And that is where our educators' mindsets have to change. And it opens up a huge challenge for UGC, for the government, for everybody. How are we going to get the best minds to come in the first place? Thank you very much.
So thanks, and yeah, we'll have the questions after that. So I think he has very rightly pointed out that future is digital, future would require hybrid. We heard that the classroom should be the learning labs, I would say, practically to use them for a purpose of implementing something. We also talked about Achar, and we talked about the way the Indian traditions have inculcated this as part of it. Now, a prominent question that comes up, and probably Dr. Lawrence, you from your academic experience want to talk about that, is that while we have got all visionary aspects of yes, what we want to do in future about the learning experience of a learner, then how do we validate content and authenticate it? Because today experiential learning is being talked about, but if we call upon as an education provider in a university, so you call upon a professional from corporate to deliver to share their experiences, but how do you gauge whether the experience shared is relevant to the learner or it is something which is off track? So what's the depth and what's the quality of even sharing those experiences? So
Sure, I'm very conscious we're almost out of time, so I'll be very brief. And I think the tension that we experience in universities generally is we bring in professional experts to teach. They tend to teach from a problem-based approach, whereas our traditional way of teaching is to give students theory, to give them ideas and to challenge them with those ideas. And I think that our goal has to be to bring those two things together. That's the thing, and that's what our and to the extent, and I acknowledge Dr. Kennedy's comment around assessment and so on, our challenge is to set forms of assessment and qualifications which demonstrate that the student is able to apply the knowledge that they're learning from the Adhyapak and the knowledge that they're gaining from the professional, and put that together. That's the challenge that we have. I think in Australian universities we have become much better at that. I don't say we have the answer, but we have become much better at doing that, and I think that's where we have to go. And I could say a lot about ChatGPT, but I'll do that this afternoon.
Yeah, quickly, just want to make a point here about bringing in people from the industry, to teach. We have been experimenting with this over the last 20 years, MDI, IMI. In fact, the concept which Dr. Lawrence has mentioned, I fully agree with what he's saying, because we come from a place of theory and then practice, and people from the industry would come from practice. But then it is a win-win if both can be integrated into the same course, because instead of being too theoretical or too practical, have let us say at least co-teaching, where you have at least 30 to 40% of the teaching by industry and the rest by academicians. That's my quick response.
thanks for that, ma'am. And just a last question before we open it for audience. So so the last question here is about we've got diversity of audience in our Indian context. If we talk about, you got all the social pyramids, I would say, to address when it comes to the education. So how does the Indian government and the policies that we have cover all the section of society? So what's our plan of covering all for right to education and equal education, sir? If you could share some ideas on that. And as an edtech company, again, I would request your inputs on that, please.
Well, that is one of the reasons why NEP is based on the pillar of accessibility and affordability. Education cannot become a commodity. It has to be the right of every individual who wants to study. It should be available at an affordable cost. But that is possible not in the present model, where we have few institutions and they have this admission process which is through a process of elimination rather than selection. And we feel proud that, well, we select only 2 or 3% of the total applicants and we are such a great university. I think that era of saying that I'm a great university because I'm rejecting so many people is gone. Now we need to look at how do we take education to the doorstep of the student, because as you said, in India we have a large number of students who come from socio economic backgrounds which do not permit them to go to a bigger university in a city. Now if I imagine the student body as a pyramid, on top of the pyramid we have a small percentage of students who can go anywhere because they have the financial capabilities, and you also have a small percentage of students who can crack the toughest of the examinations and join in the best institutions such as IITs. But the rest of the pyramid, and that is where a large number of aspirational and talented students are there, and we need to empower them, provide them opportunities to become knowledgeable and skillful. And that's the only way we can make India a globally leading country in terms of technological solutions and other developments that we can contribute for the betterment of the human society. And that's the reason why in higher education, as NEP has suggested, we are injecting a lot of technology into higher education. For example, we say that up to 40% of the total credit requirements in a program a student can take in online mode. Right now they can take it in this SWAYAM platform, but soon we will be launching the National Digital University, which will work as a hub and spoke. The hub will have a small technical and administrative team, and the spokes will be some of the best universities and institutions in India who will provide high quality digital content to our digital university. And we will also be encouraging even the content from the edtech companies to be part of the National Digital University. We may invite even some of the best universities across the globe to be part of this National Digital University. And this is the only way we can address the needs of people, students who may not have the financial capabilities to access high quality education. I think in the coming years in India, higher education is going to be a field which is very, very exciting, and a lot of interesting things will be rolled out.
Thanks a lot. We can cover
Quick in
the
interest of time, just 2 more lines to add on to what Sir mentioned. One is, of course, EdTech can be significantly helpful while we collaborate. So the question was, how are we going to support 2 different strata of the absolutely. So what we can do is to collaborate with education institutions, provide a tech platform as to enable that the quality education reaches out to everybody, as not limited to people who are in Delhi, Mumbai and Bangalore, and goes to the small tier cities, and everybody has access to a quality teacher and quality education. The second is to enable and not just in India, but also to collaborate with global institutions and bring them in India to provide quality and affordable education with the intervention of technologies. What EdTech can do together. Sir already spoke about Skill University. I think these are some of the initiatives that can definitely address the current challenges.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. May I request for all of you to please put your hands together for all our speakers.